What's up? Sorry I'm 2 days late doing this. Don't worry, I'm fine. Let's just get into the astrology. So, this is the week of June 15th through 21st. And, yeah, it's an interesting time. One thing I did want to mention before I forget is just that I feel like there's this habit that many astrologers, habit or tendency or theme that I've noticed with many astrologers, including myself, where it's easy to say, there's a chapter ending, there's a chapter beginning, and it's such an intense time. It's such an intense time in the astrology. And I think it's easy to hear this over and over again and to become numb to it and for it to become kind of cliche because it's like, okay, you said, this time is so intense and amazing, but you said that before. But in general, this entire time period from 2012 to 2026 is amazing and intense, and there's so much going on. So it is true. But also, in particular, 2020 is a crazy year, and we haven't seen the end of it at all. The beginning was obviously in January, and now we're in eclipse season, so a lot's changing now. And then we get some more crazy stuff in September, and then there's a whole new beginning that happens in December. So like, I might sound repetitive, but it is really an intense time. Okay, so for this week in particular, two things are happening. Two main things are happening. One is that we're in between two eclipses, and the other is that Mercury's turning retrograde this week on Thursday. Um, so both of those mean that like we're basically in the eye of the hurricane, so to speak. So like it's this empty space where it seems almost weirdly calm, but then it's like pressurized and intense. So there's this like energy that's almost stagnant, but it's intense. It's like pressurized. And this applies not only to this week, but most of last week as well. So things are intense, things are pressurized, things are possible now that are not usually possible. There's many timelines coming together and many timelines splitting apart. And I think when you see the world through that lens, it makes a lot more sense. This like pressurized energy. That's what we're experiencing right now. And we're not going to get released from that until Sunday at the very earliest, but possibly not till after that because Sunday is when the new moon solar eclipse happens. Okay, so day by day, I'm just going to try to do this relatively quickly. The main things I have, Monday, I wrote down confusion and misguided angst. So I have the chart for Monday here at around noon Pacific time. Monday is sort of just a continuation of the last several days before because we're still experiencing this Mars Neptune conjunction in Pisces, and Mars is not technically in detriment in Pisces, but it basically is. I mean, it's a very confusing sign for Mars, so people might be fighting for the collective or they might be fighting against the collective, fighting for humanity or their common man or woman or what have you, or fighting against it, or maybe they're trying to fight for it but they're actually fighting against it. There's this confusion. There's this like misguided angst or this like depression or rage or anger or all these more negative destructive emotions, sadness. People know that they're being lied to. They know that there's a problem that needs to be addressed and they're mad about it, but they're not sure about the details of their situation. So many different situations could play out on all levels where people are taking their frustration out on maybe what they think is causing the problem, but maybe the problem is more complicated than what they think, or maybe they're fighting the wrong thing, or they're taking their frustration out in the wrong area. That's generally what's happening. There's this confusion. Monday, there's no exact aspects. That's another reason why I say that the energy is so stagnant this week, is because there's generally not a lot of aspects happening. Um, so yeah, it's intense, but like it would almost be better if we had some more aspects because it could relieve this tension. But then again, it could also just trigger more stuff. So it's hard to say. But there's no aspects to like have any smaller events to like release this tension. So it's just kind of building up. Okay, yeah. So Monday, there's no aspects. That's basically all that's going on. We're still feeling in some senses, we're still feeling the third quarter moon in Pisces, even though it happened a few days or a couple days before. Okay, going into Tuesday. So Tuesday through Thursday, what I wrote is just more still energy pressure cooker. Because again, there's not a lot of aspects, and we're just in between eclipses. Things do change a little bit just because the moon gets farther away from Pisces, and also Mars is getting farther away from Neptune. So there's still that confusion, but it dulls down a little bit. However, again, like I said, the intensity is generally still building up. Okay, so the only aspects I really wrote, the only thing is the Sun can quincunx Jupiter at 25 degrees. So that'll be earlier in the day on Tuesday the 16th. And then also the Moon. The Moon enters Taurus early in the morning, and then by before noon, depending on where you are, it passes Uranus. And the lunar aspects are not a super big deal. It would just affect your mood, or it might affect your day a little bit, but it depends on your chart, and it depends on where you are as to what time it is that it would affect you, and also how it would affect you. It would depend on your own chart and what's going on. So it's kind of hard to read lunar aspects. There could be some volatility with the stock market, or something like that, because the moon is conjunct Uranus in Taurus, which rules commodities. But again, it's more of a short term aspect, or transit. It's very short term, so not a super big deal. But the Sun is quincunxing Jupiter on Tuesday, so it's basically part two of a three-part series, because the Sun has already conjoined. The Sun has already quincunxed Pluto. It's now quincunxing Jupiter on Tuesday, and then soon it will quincunx Saturn. So it's basically quincunxing all three of these heavier, more societal planets. So there's this tension that's building between the people and the government, or these larger factions of society versus the common, like the individual, basically. um yeah, and this tension has already been there, but it's building up significantly on Tuesday, and it's setting the stage for what's going to happen this weekend, because something completely new happens this weekend, which I will get into later when I get there. But yeah, it's basically setting the stage. And again, like I said, we might not even get clarity on a lot of this stuff until later. Yeah, just in general, there's this tension in society. Okay, and then Wednesday the 17th, there's no aspects at all. Wednesday the 17th, moon is in Taurus still, where it's exalted, so that's good. The moon is entering its sort of dark moon phase. It's getting close enough to the sun that it will either not be visible at all, or if it is visible, it'll be a very small crescent moon. So it's reaching the end of its cycle, and it's approaching the new moon solar eclipse. So if you think about it, it's almost like, it's kind of like a metaphor. So the moon is dying, or it's getting darker, so it's being obscured, and it's leaving our view. So one cycle is ending, and another cycle will begin, just like with most new moons. But because this is an eclipse, it's just a bigger deal. So there's something that's going to be happening that won't be fully understood until later, or we won't see the effects of until about a week after the eclipse. But so things might almost they might almost start to become a little bit quieter or more peaceful on Wednesday, but really it's just leading up towards something much bigger. Okay. Yeah, and that's all I have. It's kind of vague, but that's really all I have for Wednesday. It's just more of this tension that's building up. Okay, Thursday the 18th, Mercury goes retrograde at 14 degrees Cancer. Mars sextiles Pluto at 24 degrees. Mars at 24 degrees Pisces, Pluto at 24 degrees Capricorn. Sextile is not a super big aspect. It is kind of a harmonious thing, but mostly maybe people will find some truth about the things they're confused about. Pluto likes to bring truth. It's in Capricorn, which rules society and the government. Mars in Pisces wants to fight for the collective, fight for humanity, fight for the others, self-sacrifice. Um, so perhaps this sextile with Pluto and Capricorn will ground Mars a little bit, and people will figure out who the bad guy actually is. Um, but I'm not sure. It's a sextile, so it's not super strong. It might be kind of flittering, or but be what's the word? Like it might be kind of weak, or it might be there sometimes, but also not. It's sextiles could be kind of off and on. They could be. You could definitely feel them if it triggers something in your chart, but even then, it's not consistent. It's sort of fluctuating, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so that's really the only aspect. Mars goes retrograde at 14 degrees Cancer. Um, and I think this is a relatively short Mercury retrograde period. It only goes retrograde for a couple weeks. Um, I mean, but um, the textbook analysis of Mercury going retrograde in Cancer means that you're reevaluating things that are close to you, like your beliefs, your how you feel about things. It's very personal. It's extremely personal. And what I've observed is that Mercury retrograde in the water signs is actually relatively auspicious or positive. It's actually relatively easier because Mercury's going inward. It's thinking backward. It's reflecting on things. It's going back to its past. So you might run into old friends that you haven't talked to in a long time, or exes, or it could just be your own family because your family is ultimately from your past, generally. Um, yeah, but so these things are all true in general for Mercury retrograde, but especially since it's in a water sign, the water sign of Cancer, which is naturally kind of introverted and reflective, and likes to go back to its family and its close friends or people that it used to know. These things are kind of saying the same thing, Mercury retrograde and then Cancer in general. So there's this easy time, this easy flow of Mercury retrograde and Cancer. Um, yeah, so I do think it'll be relatively positive. Um, but still, it's just intense having it Mercury being at a standstill basically because it doesn't just switch retrograde and go instantly backward. It's very slow. It slows down, basically stops, and then slowly goes backward. So although Mercury retrograde in a water sign such as Cancer is relatively positive for Mercury retrograde, it's not as dysfunctional as some of the other Mercury retrogrades. It is still very intense having Mercury being at a standstill while we're in the middle of eclipse season because just what I said about the different timelines shifting and different potentialities for different totally different things to happen. We're shifting gears and it's unclear where we're going, I guess. And again, that applies to all aspects to as above, so below. It affects you personally, but I'm also talking about the world in general. I'm talking about all of it. We're shifting gears, but it's not certain what the new chapter is. And like I said before, we're not going to see it until later. Okay, so yeah, Thursday Mercury goes retrograde, but really, again, it's just at a standstill. Basically, it's intensified because it's not really moving. Okay, and then so I put Friday through, well, basically Friday through Sunday in its own category because Friday through Sunday are all about the eclipse. Even though the eclipse doesn't technically happen until Sunday, it sort of starts happening Friday. And what I mean by that, it's because, basically because the sun conjoins the north node at 29 degrees. And like I've said before, the sun and the moon have to be close to the nodes for an eclipse to happen. And when a planet, really any planet, if it conjoins either of the nodes, you do get some eclipse energy because eclipse energy is nodal energy, or themes that come about from eclipses also come about from the nodes themselves, because that's basically why we track the lunar nodes, is because they are tied into eclipses, and that they're one and the same basically. So So the sun conjoining the north node, if the moon was right there at that same exact time, then we would have a total new moon solar eclipse that would be visible. Um, but this eclipse is it happens 2 days later, so it's not gonna be exact, but it is gonna be close. Um, but because the moon, the sun, and the north node are all in the same sign, and the sun is conjunct the north node, you're definitely feeling that eclipse already. Things are gonna be um, well, I'll talk more about it when I get to the actual eclipse, but there's something very intense. It's also very intense because they're both at the 29th degree, which is a critical degree. It's the end of a sign. So, I mean, yeah, it sounds cliche, but we're at an ending and there's about to be a new beginning, basically. Um, that's pretty much all I have for Friday. The moon conjoins Venus and Gemini, which is kind of nice. But again, it's so Venus and the moon are close enough to the sun that they're both pretty dark, so they're not super strong. They're getting blinded out a little bit. Um, yeah, the moon is kind of out of the picture, I guess. There's something going on that we're not seeing because we can't see the moon at this time. Um, yeah, like later we'll look back and see that things are starting now, but you won't understand them right away. Okay, Saturday the 20th. Let me just make sure this is accurate. Oh yeah, okay. I just realized this was set for 12:48 a.m. not p.m. So I might have messed up with the times earlier in the video, but I'm just gonna go forward anyway because I don't think it makes that much of a difference. um, oh my god. Okay, Saturday, June 20th. Let me just make sure I have this right. Sorry. Okay, June 19th. I already did that. Okay, and then okay, so Saturday, June 20th is the first day of Cancer. So right here the sun is at the very end. So if you just go forward a couple hours, the sun will enter Cancer, and so this is not only the beginning of Cancer, but it's also the beginning of the season of summer. It's the summer solstice. So I'll talk about that a little bit real quick. So basically, in order to understand Cancer season is starting. Happy birthday, Cancers. Um, in order to understand Cancer, you have to understand that it's a sign that happens right after a solstice, the summer solstice. So it's one of four major transition periods in the year because it starts a new season. And the reason why it's significant astronomically and seasonally is because it's a shift in direction. So the last 3 months, when during spring, not only was there more daylight than darkness in the northern hemisphere for the last 3 months, but also there was we were gaining sunlight every day for all of spring. Um, so that comes to a peak on the summer solstice. It's the lightest day of the year. So that means that's why it's a transition period because every day after that for about 3 months for all of summer, what summer is there's still more daylight than darkness, but there's less and less daylight every day, and that explains a lot about Cancer because Cancer is a happy sign. If you think about that time of year, it's the beginning of summer, and depending on where you live, summer could be too hot or it could be, overwhelming. The energy of the sun is so overly abundant that it just like dries out everything and kills everything. So I mean, it could be negative in that sense, but I think generally for us humans, summer's generally a positive time. There's everything's vibrant and flourishing, and happy kids have time off of school, and people take vacations and stuff like that. So generally, it's a happy time. So the summer solstice is something to celebrate. There's so much vibrant energy at your disposal. So it's a good time to set intentions. this is a really good time to set intentions because we're about to have a new moon solar eclipse. An eclipse would be a good time to set intentions. A solstice would be a good time to set intentions, and a new moon would be a good time to set intentions. So we have all those three happening basically at the same time. But anyway, um, yeah. So Cancer can be a really happy, exciting time of year and sign. But at the same time, Cancer can be very melancholy. And if you understand that Cancer is the first sign of the zodiac where the sun, at least in the northern hemisphere, the sun is sort of losing its power a little bit because although it's such a um, it's a time where there's so much sunlight, it's the beginning of it decreasing. So basically, it's the first hints of fall and then winter coming because the daylight is receding. So Cancer has this sort of melancholy awareness of that fact, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's this shift in direction, and also because the energy is so vibrant, um, a lot of like satanic worshippers use this time for sacrifices or for rituals because however you want to use the energy, there's a lot of energy to use, whether you want to use it for evil or for good or just helping your own life. It's a good time to set intentions. So that's why they do that basically. Um, yeah, I think I said enough. I think I said what I need to say about that. But okay, so Saturday the sun enters Cancer, and I mean you can see that the sun, the north node, and the moon are very close. This eclipse is gonna happen at 0 degrees Cancer on Sunday. I should just. That's pretty much all I need to say about Saturday. So I think I can move on. Mars is sextiling Jupiter, so that kind of continues what I was already talking about. Moon Mars is basically sextiling Jupiter and Pluto. I already kind of covered that. So I mean, it's just basically providing this, a little bit of harmonious energy in the background. But the main thing that's happening is the eclipse. Okay, so Sunday, June 21st, we have this new moon solar eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer, and it happens right after midnight. Whoops. Okay. Um. So in this chart, it says it actually I mean, depending on where you are, it'll either happen Saturday or Sunday. Saturday the 20th or Sunday the 21st because it's happening right around midnight, at least Pacific time. It's happening right around midnight. Um, yeah, and like I said, it's at 0 degrees Cancer. And the only aspect this eclipse has is a quincunx, which is exact to the degree with Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius. Um, so although like they say that typically new moon solar eclipses are generally more positive than full moon lunar eclipses, because for a full moon lunar eclipse the moon is conjunct the south node, and the south node generally has more challenging themes to work with. With a new moon solar eclipse, both the sun and the moon are conjunct the north node, so generally those are more positive. However, with this one, since the only aspect it has is this pretty exact quincunx with Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius, that to me is a little bit, not so positive. There could be restrictions. There's this clash between the individual and the government or the authority figures. There could be this, maybe like clamping down or restriction on freedoms. I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying that the government's, that we're going to have COVID shutdowns. That could be one manifestation of it. I don't personally think that's going to happen, but I could be wrong. But there might be some kind of restrictions in general imposed on us by the government or by authority figures of some kind. Hopefully not, but that could be one potentiality. Um, yeah, there's this clash between what's right for the people or for society or what you should do for the world or whatever, and what's right for you personally. Your own truth versus like the collective or what have you, or versus society or the government, the individual versus the government or society. there's this huge clash there. And because Saturn, this new moon solar eclipse is at 0 degrees Cancer, so it's the first degree of a cardinal sign, and Saturn's at 0 degrees Aquarius. But because it's a new moon solar eclipse, it naturally begins something. It starts something anyway. But especially because it's at 0 degrees Cancer, it's at the first degree of a cardinal sign. It's bringing in something completely new that we haven't seen before. There's a completely new development. So the past couple weeks, there's been this tension building up and this stress and this misguided angst and confusion and this tension between the people and the government. It's been building up, building up, building up. Sunday, something happens where something out of that leads to something completely new, if that makes sense, or something completely new comes into this world related to these tensions that have been building up in the background for the last couple weeks. And I don't know what it is. I don't think we'll know exactly what this new thing is until about a week later, once we have the first quarter moon, because, or at least once the moon starts gaining light, maybe in Leo, because it's like a metaphor. When the moon is dark, you can't see it. You can't see what it represents yet. You won't see it until later, once it starts gaining light on the other side of the sun. So, yeah, but generally the energy is on the side of the people or the individual, but then it's just being clashed by the larger societal structures, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty much what I see. Okay, and then like I said, it might happen the 20th or 21st. I would just apply this eclipse basically to the 19th, 20th, and 21st. It is important to note the exact sort of time or date, but this will sort of start happening on Friday the 19th, but then it really kicks off this weekend. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. The 21st, there's no exact aspects other than, again, depending on where you are, the new moon solar eclipse quincunx Saturn. That's really the only thing. There's no other exact aspects. Mars is still sort of sextiling Jupiter, so that is some harmonious energy in the background. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Or like not quite on Sunday, but just after Sunday, the moon will pass Mercury. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Yeah, something completely new coming into the picture. There's gonna be this weird twist, and I'm almost it's kind of weird because I was a lot more excited for the past full moon lunar eclipse, even though, like I said, typically a full moon lunar eclipse would be more negative or more dark, and a new moon solar eclipse would be more positive. But the last one seemed a lot more positive to me. This one, with that really strong quincunx of Saturn, it seems more difficult or challenging, more restrictive, darker. And it's just maybe a little bit intimidating being at 0 degrees Cancer because there's this completely new energy coming in. And it's unpredictable. I don't know. I do think the Cancer side is more positive, that if you just go with what's simple, go with yourself. Go with yourself and your home and whoever's really close to you. There's going to be new developments with things like that. Things that are really close to home. Which could be good too. I think there'll be at least enough good to balance the bad, or enough light to balance the darkness. It's just about sorting what's what and going from there, basically. And I would say being objective, but I don't think it is about being objective at this time. I think it's more about tuning into your heart and being actually very subjective, and doing what's right for you, and just not go with what's simple and basic, and don't assume or project. Don't like the quote, believe nothing that you hear and half of what you see. Cancer could be a little bit cynical or skeptical. Just go, it likes what's consistent and comfortable and close to home. Yeah, so just go with yourself. Go with your innermost feelings, I guess, which is tricky, but that's what Cancer is all about. So, okay, that's pretty much what I see. Hopefully, that was enlightening enough. Um, yeah, this week is intense, and then everything changes on Sunday. And after that, it's another new chapter. We're leaving so many chapters and entering so many chapters this year. This whole year is this huge intermediate phase between two larger intermediate phases. Like there's so many things switching over, changing over. I could talk about that more in a different video, but that's all I'm gonna say right now. Okay, so thanks for watching. I hope that was interesting. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next week on Sunday. Bye.